Welcome back to another episode of the Western Hippie Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela, and I'm here with my co-host, Willard the Corgi. And I'd like to think of us as the original Western hippies. And I honestly don't have any plans for this episode other than I really just need to get back on the mic. And I kept thinking of this idea that my dad told me when I was super little about riding horses. And it was every time you get bucked off, you have to get back on. And specifically what I was thinking about the difference between that saying, the when you fall off a horse, you need to get back on, versus the falling off the wagon saying. And to me, the falling off the wagon saying, you know, the saying I'm talking about, I've fallen off the wagon and I got to get back on. And we typically apply it to like dieting and exercise. And to me, that saying has just been fueled with so much shame, as if there is one wagon that we are all supposed to be on. And if we are on that wagon, we are quote unquote doing good in life. And if we are off that wagon, we are quote unquote doing bad in life. And that's why I really am liking the saying of when you fall off the horse, you got to get back on, because to me, it's less about shame and it's more about courage and bravery. And the ironic thing is I'm almost through my second memoir called Be Fucking Brave. And I've been really sitting with this concept of bravery, because if I'm writing a book called Be Fucking Brave, like, you better bet your ass I am really sitting with the concept of bravery, because I wrote this. Sometimes when I just need to get in the flow of writing, I'll just start writing nonsense. Like I just need to start typing kind of a thing. And so when I need to do that, I typically start with a Dear Michaela or a Dear God or a Dear Universe, whoever I want to talk to that day. And when I type Dear Michaela, I'm trying to talk to like a higher version of me, a version of myself that has a higher perspective than my current version does. When I'm talking like Dear God, I'm trying to pull in new, like even deeper and newer information. And for some reason, when I went to go type this, I typed it Dear God. And really it was this, who am I? Who am I to write a book called Be Fucking Brave? Who am I? Like, I don't consider the things in the book that most people would consider brave. And I know people consider them brave because even though this is the first time I've put it into a book, I've told my story many times throughout the years. And so as I've told my story, I've had people tell me, oh, you're so brave. I can't believe you went through that. And I don't consider it brave. I consider it duty. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to rise up to the occasion. I walked through the occasion. And yes, we can get into all the philosophical debates of, well, it's still brave and yada, yada, yada. The point is, it has to feel brave to me. It doesn't matter what anyone else's perception is. It actually has to feel brave to me, or I'm going to call bullshit. And so I start this paragraph of, Dear God, you know, who am I to write this book? And, you know, the things that we're talking about, I don't consider brave. And at the end of it, what I finally decided to consider brave was to write the book. It was this concept of getting back on the horse. It was this concept of, I really truly felt, and I don't know how to explain this very well. So I'm just going to mumble through it, and hopefully my aunt is from England and she always says, I'm in the middle of a muddle. Like, we're just going to muddle through it and hopefully we get out of the middle and onto the other side of this muddle. But after the sexual assaults happened, I planned on taking it to the grave. I was never going to tell anybody. I was going to take it to the grave. I don't know how I was planning on pulling that off, but I figured if I didn't tell anybody, they wouldn't know. And then after word came out about what happened between Todd in the first book, if you have read my first book, The Barn Off Colfax Lane, and that's a pseudonym that I use. After what happened with Todd, I just decided to take it to the grave. And then the moment my sister found out, who told my mom, who told my dad, who told the detective, and et cetera, if you've read the book. Did I put that in the first book? I didn't. It's in the second book. I was like, wait a minute, that is the second book. So spoiler alert on book number 2, actually book number 3, but that's a story for another day. I knew I would write the book. I don't know how, I don't know why. I just always knew this story would end up in a book one day. And once I started writing the book, it brought up so much. And so I actually quit writing for quite some time. And as I get to the end of this Dear God section that I'm writing to just kind of get my writing juices flowing again, that actually does feel brave to me. Deciding to get back on my horse and go, if we're not going down the wagon or the path, get back on the trail. I used to trail ride horses with my dad. Get back on the trail and follow the path that God has put on my heart, that my higher self has put on my heart. Like, that is what felt brave to me. Facing all that other stuff, I really don't know how to say it other than it just felt like a predetermined contract. Like, before I was even born, this is what was going to happen. And that's why it didn't feel brave to me, is because it just felt, the only word I can really think of, and I think I said this earlier, was duty. It just felt like duty, and duty doesn't feel brave to me. I'm pretty controversial about this, but I really get annoyed with how many brownie points people want for doing their duty. And honestly, and I'll get into this later, especially in parenting, or it's like, that's your job, that's your duty. You don't get a brownie point for that. I'm sorry, you chose this, you do it. And it's not that I don't think it's strong or brave or great that people, own animals or have children, but they're the choices we make. And then we want people to feel sorry for us. And I'm just not into that at all. It's your freaking job. Do it. Don't expect anything other than the reward that comes with doing your job, is basically what I'm saying. And I very much felt that way about the book as well, or about what I went through as well. Like, it was my job, especially because what I really felt like was my job was, if I went through these court trials, if I said what I needed to say, my job was to do everything I could to prevent it happening to another child. I felt like that was my job. I did my job. Nothing brave about it. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done. And that's why I didn't feel brave in writing the book or in going through that. It was just duty, end of story. And again, at the end of the day, no matter what it is, this is just my example. Someone can tell us we are brave or we are strong, and unless we believe it, it does not mean two shits. And I was actually thinking about this morning, because when I was around 19 years old, so about 10 years ago, I had a friend who I just so strongly believed in her. She was so freaking talented. Like, in the horse industry, she was one of the most, to this day, she is one of the most talented people I know with horses. Like, she just gets horses, and she's so athletic. And so as far as the capabilities that her horses had, her horses could compete with anybody in the industry. And it is a tough industry as far as style and look. She would get into the show pen and she would fall apart. And, we can make all these excuses, but at the end of the day, she did not believe in herself, and that reflected in the show pen. It didn't matter how talented she was. And really, at the time, because I was young and I was riding horses with her, I took it so personally. I remember thinking, I believe in you so strongly. Like, isn't that enough? And the truth is, it's not. I have so many people that believe in me and believe that I can do it, and it's not enough. I have to believe in myself. And so even though some of the stories in what will be the book, Be Fucking Brave, will be considered brave to so many people, so far, the biggest act of bravery for me is just recommitting to the commitment that my higher self, God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, made before I incarnated on this earth. Like, to not duck out, of life. Like, that is what's brave for me. Cause I got to a point the last couple of years of like, that was the biggest question that plagued me the last couple of years, is what's the point? Like, what is the point of this? I have very much hit what you would call it rock bottom, and just started questioning my existence, the existence of life. What's the point of this life, and all of the things. And so in that, got like super depressed and just wanted to be done. Like, there was a part of me that I very much just felt like, not even just done with, like, when I say that, like, I don't mean like done with like life and existence, but I mean with this whole concept of having dreams and chasing dreams and trying to be full of, I was just like, what's the effing point? And I also, to be fair, I also knew that wasn't my voice talking. I knew it was like this depression that had sank in. And so in writing that letter, it was like, no, Michaela, this is where you get the chance to be brave is that you get to choose to check back into God, check back into your higher self, check back into the universe, and recommit to this plan that you and God intended before you even incarnated on this earth. Some people call them soul contracts, soul plans. I've been learning how to read them. And it's been super impactful to me because really at the end of the day, I had to be reminded I do have a purpose. I do have a reason for existing. And that's the fucking point, because we all do. And it's so easy to forget that, especially when the world's in chaos. It's so easy to check out and check into the world's problems. But when our life really gets beautiful is when we check out of the world's problems and check back into our problems. And so as of right now, that is my act of bravery to get started on the book. And that was about a month ago. That was the bravery that I had to check back into, was like, no, Michaela, that your act of bravery is checking back into the book. You're writing the book. And then it's funny because as I started writing again, the other thing, sometimes I need a break and I want to work on the cover, so I actually posted 2 cover options at a Facebook group, and the image I have of me on the cover is considered a very soft image. And so a lot of the feedback I was getting was, this woman doesn't look brave. She looks this, she looks that. And I'm like, well, guys, I'm the woman on the photo. So it's just like, take it easy. Actually, I'm really into that song right now. I know some people hate covers, but I love the Eagles version and Travis Tritt's version of Take It Easy. So I just wanted to start replying to them in lyrics like, I'm running down the road trying to loosen my load, guys, calm the F down. But what I realized too in that moment is my acts of bravery is not being tough. It's not being hard. I've got that. I have got that down so good. I can be tough. I can be ridiculously tough. I'm actually kind of tired of being strong and tough, but I think that's a conversation for another day. I've got that down. That is not brave for me. Again, with this whole like duty and us trying to give brownie points where they're not necessary, like that is not a brownie point that anybody needs to give me. I've got it down. Being soft, being open, being vulnerable, being intimate, that is more brave for me than being tough and being strong and being strong, being tough. That is very much a default for me. It's being soft and open that is brave for me. And so that's been kind of an interesting thing to sit on, is what are these different, and I actually am considering ending the book that way, of talking about the concept of bravery and these different definitions of bravery and objective definitions versus personal definitions. And objectively, I honestly have come to the conclusion that bravery is just heart-led stupidity. Like, not all of us maybe can call on bravery every moment of the day, but we could all be stupid for a couple seconds to get something brave done. Because if you think about it objectively, a fireman running into a burning building is a stupid idea. But when they're doing it, or, let me rephrase that for a second. If I said out loud, a man ran into a burning building, we would all say, that is stupid. Why are you doing it? But if we take that same sentence and say a fireman ran into a burning building to save a 10-year-old's life, we would consider that an act of bravery. But objectively speaking, it's the same action. A man is running into a burning building. The only reason we consider it brave is because he's doing it for something greater than himself. It's still stupid. It's just stupidity done well and done for just reasons. And so that's kind of been my joke as I've been contemplating bravery at a deeper level throughout this process, and realizing my name and title for the book was going to be Fucking Brave. It's just sent me on this contemplative journey of bravery in and of itself. And so that's kind of what I've been telling myself, even with today, is, if you can't be brave for 2 seconds, you would never argue being stupid for a couple of seconds. You're like, oh, I can pull that off. That's fine. And so, I've been off the podcast for so long. I keep putting it off because there's this like shame in the fact that I have been off of the mic for so long. And I was like, Michaela, just get on and talk. Like, just say some stupid shit if you've got to. Maybe you'll say some great things. Today is more for you, quote unquote, getting back on the horse than it is to sound a certain way. And interestingly enough, I think that's another piece of bravery that I've been sitting with, is we all have our default like trauma mechanisms and go to what I call like protective mechanisms. And one of mine is make it look perfect at all costs. Michaela, make it look perfect. Don't make it look like you're falling apart. And so one of the things I have a tendency to start putting on a front or start making things look better than they actually are. And I would catch myself doing that here on the mic as well. When I had, for some of you that have been around a while, I had a original podcast called Live Aligned Radio. Then I started the Western Hippie. And I would dip in and out of it, but especially when I had Live Aligned Radio, there was this temptation to get on and almost have like a stage presence, which is fine. I think having a stage presence is good because it can get us out of our head. What's wrong is if that stage presence comes with a script for a character and not words that are my own or from my heart. But that was a default. And so that was really my intention today, was like, I just need to get back on the mic and I need to be as me as possible and not get in my head about trying to make myself sound a certain way or look a certain way. And I think we also need to get out of the habit of like calling that a lie, or it's because for 9 times out of 10 or for 9 out of 10 people, it's just going to be a trauma response. It's just a behavior that started with a good intention. And then if we don't go back in and like shift and adjust the behavior, it just becomes a habit. And so if someone's not doing it to purposely be mean or put on a fake, I certainly wasn't. It was just a habit built over time that I had to learn to break, and I'm still learning how to break it. And writing the book has helped me in so many ways because it really makes you see how the truth really is the only thing that will set us free. And the more honest I can be, the bigger permission slip I can grant others to do the same. And in that, we both find our freedom. So I think the last few things that I wanted to finish up with today, and I felt like that was an accidental good transition point in freedom, is the freedom to be ourselves, because the last 2 years, I would say, have been just very interesting for me. And I'm very careful at using descriptive words because they have been really hard in some ways. And I have I can't tell if this bites me in the ass or if this helps me. I think it's helpful in some instances, and I think it bites me in the ass in some instances, if I'm being really honest. I have a very narrow window of things that I consider hard because, objectively speaking, I actually don't think there are many things that are as big of a problem as we make them out to be. And I just has it been hard? Yes. And I need to honor that. And the perspective piece is things could have been harder. And I'm really grateful that they weren't harder. And I'm really grateful, even though they were challenging, that I have been able to get through it with great people, great friends, new relationships. Like my animals are here. I did lose Thunder last April, which was one of our horses that we had since I was a freshman, which that was super freaking hard. So yeah, as I sit with it, there has been hard parts. And in the ups and the downs of the last couple of years, it has been the freedom to be myself again and peeling off those layers and taking out that persona. And the one thing that I wanted to give to you today, that when I look at the domino, like the first domino, and that was what I wanted to share with you today to help you start looking for that domino, or this concept of the one thing that I'll share with you is what domino can you knock over? What's the one thing you can go do that is going to tip those dominoes and allow a chain of events to start happening in your life that is going to lead you towards your purpose? Because now, almost 5 years later, when I objectively look at it, the thing that got me started and has tipped over the dominoes to guide me to where I am today was when I said out loud and even started writing the book. I'll give you the whole story. So in 2019, I decided to go back to college because I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And the thing is, I actually do really love teaching. I just realized I don't like the medical system, or not the medical system, but I don't like the medical system in general. But I don't like the college curriculum is what I meant to say. I don't like colleges. I don't like what they have become. I don't like this whole groupthink thing. So I went back to a community college, but I was talking to my professor who worked at PSU, and I was like, honestly, screw this, which I'm so thankful I did, because then COVID ended up hitting just not even a year later. And but I went back, I did a writing class and I did an English class. And at some point in the class, I decided to do what I called this project. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I think at the time it had been over 10 years since the sexual assaults happened. And I really wanted to talk about my experience, my journey, and the things I'd learned in 10 years and what I had done in those 10 years and what had changed or what had stayed the same. So I had a plan. It was 2 photos and 2 videos per week for 4 weeks, and each week had a theme. A friend of mine who is a super talented photographer, spoiler alert, one of these photos I'm actually going to use as the book cover for Be Fucking Brave, because the book came to me in that time. And I really, there's just this one photo that I like, really, the photo that's quote unquote too soft. I really feel like honoring that version of myself with this. Will it change? Possibly. But as of right now, that's the plan. So anyway, my friend did the photos, I did the videos, and I released those, the 2 photos and the 2 videos for, so it was like Monday, Wednesday were photos, Tuesday, Thursday were videos. And I can't remember all the themes, but it was like break the chain, you are not your abuse, speaking, like that was kind of the first thing I feel like that helped me get through the sexual assaults, was just talking about it. And I was fortunate in the fact, since I did go to trials and all the court shenanigans, I had to talk about it, sooner than most victims did. And I feel like that set me free in so many ways. And so I just kind of was talking about that. And then I remember I got to the end of it. At the end of it, I think I was in Brazil visiting my best friend from college, from film school college, because I went to film school before I went back to college to become a teacher that I decided not to become. Well, I'm becoming a teacher, but not in like the traditional sense that we would think of it. But, so I, okay, that's what happened. I went to therapy and then I went to Brazil because at the time I was also going to therapy once a week. One of the perks of going through the judicial system in Oregon, I don't know if it's like this in any other states, I got a year of therapy paid for because of the sexual assaults. I had never used it, so I decided to use it. And so I'd been going to therapy once a week for a year, paid for by the state, which was actually really cool. And so I went to therapy, I think a few days before I went to Brazil, and I was just getting ready to wrap up this sexual assault project. And the therapist, shout out to Amy, had asked me what was next. She's like, what's next? And I remember I was like excited, but my gut kind of sank because I was like, oh no, the book. The book is what's next. And she's like, well, that's exciting. I'm like, uh-huh. Because the thing that I've discovered with writing for me is I can, talking about like earlier when I was talking about like escaping and checking out, the writing makes me be more present with myself than like any other thing that I do. And so in writing, I tend to have to face a lot of demons that I've been running from because I am at a moment in a state where I have to be present with them. And I was so like, I could talk about what happened to me. I don't know if this will make sense, but I could talk about what happened to me with the sexual assaults from like a distance. So if I was looking above the situation, like up at the situation objectively and very disconnected, like, oh, that didn't happen to me. That happened to some girl who happened to look like me. And I knew in order to write the book, I would eventually have to like get back into the version of me that actually experienced those things. And I had been disconnected from her probably since the day that I left that barn. And yeah, because even like going through my court stuff, I was very dissociated and very disconnected from that time and period in my life. So, even though it was exciting that I was like, okay, it's time to write the book, I was not ready to write the book. So I did start writing the book, and it was so, I am going to find this one day and probably post it on my blog, on my website or something, just so people can see the like different stages of the book. I always thought that would be fun to like read the author's like first copy, what we would call like the shitty first draft. Anyway, and so I started writing it, and I just couldn't keep going. I was just and so I started writing a fiction book. That was like, well, if I'm not ready to write this book, I'll start writing this book. And at least I'm writing. I was just avoiding it, which is fine. I still got writing. I'm not mad at myself. I think it's funny. Like looking back at 2019 version of me, I'm like, oh, that is so hilarious. Like, I don't want to do this. So I'm going to do this, which is kind of like doing this, but it's actually doing that. I'm like, okay, Michaela, great thinking. Maybe not productive, but we'll dissect that another day. And so what I've realized going back to this domino, going back to this concept of the one thing, just making the commitment of I am going to write this book, I'm serious about doing this, was enough to knock over the dominoes to get me to where I am today. Because I had to, from that day where I said, I'm going to write this book, it's going to be done. I don't know when, but it's going to be done. Because that was the other thing I was beating myself up for, was the actual, I can type really fast. I can type just about as fast as I can talk. To actually type the book would not have taken me that long. What took me so long, let's see, because 2019 to 2024. So yeah, about every bit of 5 years, because I published the first book in May. I had to become the person who could write this book. Like, as I said, as far as like being so disconnected from those emotions, I had to become the person who was more connected to my emotions, who could drop into that version of myself and write from that version and that being of myself. And so just making that commitment was like enough from a spiritual perspective, like enough in my free will for God and my higher self to start putting things on my path to help me get reconnected to myself. So from the therapy, I went to personal development conferences. From the personal development conferences, I went into psychedelics and MDMA therapy. From the psychedelics and the MDMA therapy, I went into practices called spiritual guidance and learning how to release trapped emotions from the body. Now from there, I am going into training my intuition and learning how to become, that's my really big goal, is to become more of a medical medium and just getting more accurate with my intuition. Like, I have this gift of intuition that I discovered in the process of going through this deep trauma therapy from the psychedelic therapy and releasing trapped emotions. And then now it's like, how do I actually train this to be a powerful tool and not just a gift? And so that's like what led me here now. And would this stuff have come across my path eventually? Yes. And when I look at it objectively, it came from me making that commitment of, I am going to write this book. I feel like writing has always been a big part of my purpose. And so just making that commitment and saying to God, source, the universe, that I am going to follow my purpose, AKA writing this book. That's when those things started happening to get me back on my path and back on my purpose. And so what I want to give you today to sit with is, what is the one thing that you know you need to do that you've been avoiding? So for me, it was the book. For you, it might be finishing an art project. It might be, as corny as it is, it might be going to clean something. Like, we look at all of these things like so insignificantly, but what your higher self and what the universe is looking for is one step, one move towards your purpose, one commitment, it's just, yeah, gosh, you know what the visual I'm seeing right now is when we purchase a puzzle. You just have to purchase the puzzle, open the bag, and start putting one piece at a time in place. And that is enough for your higher self, God, and the universe it's you saying yes. And when you say yes to them, they can say yes to you and start putting things in your pathway to put you back on path. It is this both and. And so it may seem insignificant for you to go clean something that you know you need to clean, but to your higher self or source, God, the universe, that's like, they're saying yes, we can keep going. And so it's finishing the art project. It's going to pick up your camera again. It's writing something, a poem. It's writing a script. It's recording a podcast episode. It's, let me see if anything else is coming through. It's starting to look for another job. It's, starting to see value in yourself. It's getting rid of old clutter that doesn't serve you anymore. It was an older version of yourself. Let's Let's see. Let me ask Willie if he has anything. It's going on a walk. It's going on a run. It's going and visiting a place that you love, but you haven't visited in so long. It's taking 5 minutes to just sit in silence and see if your intuition is telling you anything. It's just one step that we typically deem as insignificant, but it's actually the permission slip to both ourselves and our higher selves to get us back on path. And so I think that's, just my encouragement to you today is to sit with yourself for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what do I know I need to do that I've been avoiding? And just take one action step towards that. And even just learning your yeses and your nos from your intuition again, that has been super impactful for me as far as letting my intuition guide my life again and not my head, because my head keeps getting me into trouble, which we will talk about on another episode. But either way, I just wanted to say thank you for being here and thank you for being on this journey that I'm on with me. And for those of you that listen to Live Aligned Radio that are still here for the Western Hippie, I'm really excited to get back on the podcast. It feels really good to talk to you today. And I just want to say thank you for your patience as I've been on a very big roller coaster the last 2 years trying to figure out what the hell to do with my life. Do I actually want a podcast? Do I actually want to help people? Do I just want to go hide in a hole and do a job where nobody sees me and be content with that? Because it was very tempting for a hot minute. So yeah, I just want to send a really heartfelt thank you for all of you who have supported me over the years. I don't have a concrete plan with the podcast talking about I want to be a teacher. I really want to start teaching some of these concepts that I've been learning, because as I was sitting with it, some of the concepts I've been learning, I've been studying for almost 11 years, which is kind of crazy that I'm old enough to say I've been studying certain modalities and practices for 11 years now. But it's interesting because I always intuitively felt my life was going to start after high school. And I'm 29 now. And I really feel like from high school to now, it's been undoing everything that I learned in high school. If I could go back, I would just drop out and say, let's not, in the words of Yoda, let's not have to unlearn what I have learned. Let's just not learn it in the first place. I'm joking. No, I'm not. So I really feel like I'm ready to start teaching some of the things I've been learning about holistic healing and different modalities. And that's really what I want to teach, is this concept of holistic health. But I've been meditating on it, holistic as in WHOLE, to look at the whole picture. Because even in holistic health, we'll try to throw an herb at something and it's well, there's a mental and emotional piece to that as well. And how do we bring in this whole picture and create harmony in the whole body and not just one section of life? So anyway, if you have anything specifically you want to learn, please DM me at Miss Michaela May on Instagram and Mrs. MS, because it is really helpful to know what you're working through at the moment and what you want to learn. I'm just gonna start putting stuff out, holistic health as far as dog holistic health, horse holistic health, and then obviously human holistic health. Because one of the big concepts I've been learning is our emotional health has a great impact on our animals and how we can rewire and release our trapped emotions and see a positive impact on our animals. So anyway, that's what's coming next on the podcast. I'm really ready to step into more of a teaching role now that I've been learning some of these concepts, starting to put more of these concepts in action. I've been able to see results from some of these concepts, because it's one thing to know it, but then when you put it into practice, it's does this work or does it not? And I've been fortunate enough to start seeing some of the stuff in action. So it's time to start teaching it. I've got a few more things. And then, just book stuff, talking more about my story and the ins and outs of it. So I'm going to wrap this up now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a fellow Western hippie, and I will talk to you soon.